Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it, weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Cranack, Willie J. You know it's a big game when Willie J. breaks out the old Big 8 hat, I think from the late 80s, and is ready to go. Nebraska, Penn State, the much-anticipated home opener. I don't know how anticipated the game is with two 0-5 teams, but man, Nebraska fans thirsty.
Two teams combined 0-5.
Right. Nebraska thirsty for a win. Mr. Cranack, Penn State reeling. What is going to happen? We've got 2 hours to discuss. Can join us this morning. 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio and at Mark Skurs. Cranack, what's up, man? Been a crazy week. How you living?
You know, it's good. I'm happy to see the home opener. I'm interested to see how Nebraska's home environment looks with the cutouts, right? Just how does it compare to some of the other ones that look sad? I mean, let's be honest. Like when you look at some of the audiences, some of the crowd, the lack of cutouts. I mean, not that cutouts make it look amazing, but you know what I'm saying. There's something that looks very odd about it. I just wonder I'm just curious what the whole scene will look like. I mean, the tunnel walk.
Right.
Can you imagine that? The tunnel walk, like you got the music going. I'm assuming they're doing the tunnel walk.
Mm.
But they do that for the fans.
Sure.
Right.
Well,
now it's like
for the players too. I mean, it's kind of a rite of passage thing.
But the cool part about it is the fact
fans.
that you are high-fiving.
You're worshipped for 3 minutes by 90,000.
Right. That's the greatest part, right? Like, wow, I'm going to be completely worshipped, probably in an unhealthy manner, but I'll take it for the next 3 minutes. Like, so think about that even. So they're walking through the tunnel where that's usually I take my kids down there every year to get a high five
Cranack,
from the.
I love you, but let's be honest. There's a part of you that kind of digs it too.
Listen, okay. No.
They don't. Do the little ones have face paint on, or is that just you?
Listen,
I love you. I love you.
Shut up. As I sit here with I got my my glossies and my Sharpie. Got a second? No.
Mr. Frost, can you sign this before you go kick someone's ass, Mr. Frost?
But no, think like that part alone is going to set a strange mental psychological. Don't tell me they're going to line the tunnel walk with cutouts.
I think, that's extra, dude.
Oh.
I don't know if it's digital or if it's, this has been reported and I clearly didn't put that in my back pocket for the home opener. But I think because today's going to be really freaky, but in a good way, because section 36, row 9, we have Cousin Dino cut out from our trip to Boulder. You know, the picture we got, you took of us by the Runs of Tent. Okay. So we got Cousin Dino there. He'll be with us at 8:50 for his Cousin Dino's prediction. And then my dad hated the cornhead. I dislike the cornhead. So after a few Miller Lights, once upon a time at a bar, before the Oregon game in 2016, Joe Papa put on a cornhead. And we have that evidence. So what we did for Dad, because he'd be going today, if we could all go, and things didn't go the way they went with Dad.
Yeah.
We got a picture of him next to Dino So they're front and center in row 9 in the south end zone, just like it's 1979 and Elvis Peacock made him go head to berries to drown their sorrows.
Complete with the corn head.
He's got the corn head on. Uh-huh.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
And he's shaking his fist at me right now in heaven for the corn head picture.
He's laughing.
I know. There's lots of pictures we could have gone with, but we went with the corn head. So I don't know if I'm allowed down there or not. I thought Hoiberg's picture yesterday on Twitter was beautiful, where he had all 3 of his 2021 recruits cutouts.
Yeah,
where they were in the east section of the stadium,
kind of where they would be normally.
Yeah, right. So
yeah, like pretty close up near the Husker bench,
which was awesome. And you got McGowan's there, which was just sweet. And you got the mayor smiling, and here's a picture of my 5-star. And we need to set up.
That too.
We'll get there. We need to set up a game of horse with no dunking between McGowan's and Willie J, because Willie J is this sneaky, gritty 3-point assassin, the pride of Lincoln East.
Okay.
And there is such urban legend about him and Elijah, quite frankly, with their pickup skills. And right now, Willie J is just blushing about your basketball ability.
The difference about me and Elijah is he doesn't know when to stop. He doesn't know when to stop shooting. That's the thing about.
Okay,
me.
so he's more of a volume guy. You're kind of a quality shot taker.
If I'm not hitting, I'll pass it.
Okay.
Hey Willie, when we end up going 1-on-1, just a little heads up, man. When you think I'm going right, nah, bro. I'm going left, and then vice versa.
It's going right to the Ben Gay tent.
I'm just giving you that heads up now.
Okay.
So you can prepare defensively.
I will have to.
And don't slap the floor, because that gives me just enough time to blow by it.
Oh, they teach that early, though.
Okay.
There's this trigger moment with Cranack over years of watching and hating Duke. Every time Woj would slap the floor, it's like a bull and seeing the red cape. Cranack goes off.
Okay.
But back to football and today's mood, right, with the cutouts. It's really cool. I mean, you're going to have
it is cool.
Thousands of Nebraska fans who can't be there physically, either pictures of themselves or loved ones that will be there, and the family dog's there and some Husker gear, which is really cool. I mean,
there's stories behind all those,
right?
Man,
and I love those
awesome.
stories. So
that is beautiful. What I'm saying, though, is from a player's point of view, when you come out of the locker room, the tunnel walk, the sounds playing, you're very used to having a loud chorus of people literally screaming for you. Mm-hmm. Little kids holding out their hands, getting 5s, right?
Yep.
It hits you right away if you're a player, like, damn, we are supported. I got to bring it, right? Like, it's just that's just the environment that's created. But now when they're going to come out, it's going to be inanimate.
Yeah.
There are no people. Maybe they're pumping in sound. I don't know.
Well, yeah, they'll have they'll have the old Memorial Stadium sound system cranked.
But there's no one actually there. And so, like, if you just look at it from a player's point of view, that's going to be very surreal.
You're going to have
surreal.
You're going to have a few fans, family members there. But I don't know what it is. I mean, I saw on Twitter Feldarius Payne's folks are coming in.
Nice.
But, I mean, you're going to have Kurt Warner's, Cade's folks, Kurt's going to be here, and that's awesome. I mean, you're going to have parental support, but it's
of course
a larger venue that's holding mom and dad and
might as well play it at Seacrest.
Well, it'd look a little better.
Right. Might as well.
But the cutout part is phenomenal, and I don't have the total number on people but it wasn't very expensive for just a section in the stadium. I think it's a little more for if you get propped up down by the tunnel walk. And
sure.
I could be all wrong on this, but I think that's what memory's telling me anyway, where you can set it up. So, no, this will be cool. I'm hoping to get I want to FaceTime Dino and Mom. She's down in Arizona from the section before, kickoff happens at 11. This is a monster game. I mean, it is absolutely a key moment in this season, and it seems like we've had that hint of a storyline every week. Last week was supposed to be it. You get off the schneid. You felt good about Ohio State. There were some moments. And then, man, the first 4 minutes of the second half, the last 4 minutes of the first half was what did you in against Ohio State on top of their insane talent and quarterback play. But then you go to Northwestern, and things are rolling for Nebraska. And Adrian played well with his legs and just was off throwing the football. And now you've got the quarterback storyline on top of the fact you've got a desperate team, desperate for a win. And that's a storyline. That's the top storyline for both plays, with a subplot being both quarterbacks. I mean, I'm anxious to see in game which coach and which staff kind of shake themselves from questionable decisions or play calling or execution between the lines. And then just from a mental standpoint, where are things going to be at with Clifford? Because he's been a mess. He was really awesome. I mean, we're talking 4 straight years and New Year's Day 6 bowl games for Penn State. They've got elite talent along the lines of scrimmage, the way that they've recruited. They're playing awful. They got beat by a regional rival. Not just beat, destroyed. I mean, it looked like they should have switched uniforms. That's how bad the beating was last Saturday by Maryland to Penn State. Then you have Nebraska, who, by all accounts, if you listen to Chinander and Frost, I mean, they've come back to practice the right way this week. But you've heard about turning the corner, and you've heard about chip on their shoulder. Kranek, I almost think it's a little bit to the point where Nebraska, some of the upperclassmen, right? I mean, they don't have, bless their heart, a history of winning, right? I mean, you look at their time here, some of them have had one winning season. And like one guy has played in a bowl game. There's probably a few more, but I mean, there's not too many JoJo Domans, right? Where that they were in the Music City Bowl against Tennessee all the way back in 2016, because you've been 3 years removed from a bowl game, and you've won some games, but you've not beaten anybody the caliber of a Penn State, 0-3 or not. So the task is mighty for Nebraska, but they could do it. They get it done. I'm not going to say, it's an 0-3 Penn State. I'm going to say, like, well, you beat Penn State when their backs were against the wall, and that's very impressive. Let's see if Nebraska can do it. Vegas is still saying -3.5. But it's just the question, man. Can Nebraska get out of their own way? And even if they do, Penn State may find themselves and out-talent Nebraska. I mean, there's so many different dynamics here today.
There's a lot. And, Penn State doesn't talk and sound like a team, at least they didn't around the press conference time, that's coming in with a lot of confidence and coming in with a lot of camaraderie. And
they're
they say that
distracted, they're pissed, they're venting publicly. I mean, it's not a good look.
No, yeah, exactly. I'm paraphrasing, but one of the players said something along the lines of, we're not really a team right now.
And Dodson, so that's their stud wideout.
Yeah, so they have some camaraderie. Now, can you get that right? Yep, you can. You can get that right. Can you get that right against Nebraska? Yes, that is certainly possible. But I think you're coming in. I think the team that's coming in Penn State is sort of vulnerable, right? Like mentally, they're just not quite right. Maybe they don't have the right leadership amongst the team right now. I don't know, but they obviously seem vulnerable. And you look at the record and it tells you that, especially when you look at the first 2 games. Now, keep in mind that they played Indiana, lost to Indiana. Now we see what Indiana is. I think we all knew they were respectable and they were good. They're ranked 10th right now. Mm-hmm. What do rankings mean? Whatever, that's another story. But regardless, Indiana's reeling off W's. And they're doing it in impressive fashion. They're doing it with good defense. They're doing it with sustained offense. They got a pretty badass quarterback, right? So then you follow that up with Ohio State. Ohio State only wins by 13, but that game, I don't even think it was that close, right? Gave up 500-plus yards.
They were down they were down 24 to 19 points all game.
Yeah, and made it scratched out a few late.
That was one of those moments where Willie J pours you that last drink when he's tending bar. It's last call. And, at 10 o'clock, she looked like a 2. At 2 o'clock, she looks like a 10.
Well, Alabama Slammers will do that. But I digress. then Penn State follows up with Maryland, and Maryland just boat races them. I mean, just like a blitzkrieg, a siege of offense. This Maryland juggernaut.
They got a little to it.
But I mean, seriously, they lit them up for big plays. They only ran like 61, but they lit them up, put up 35. I mean, so after that, I think Penn State starts questioning everything. Like, what are we doing? Who are we? Why am I here? This pandemic, like, I think it just completely disoriented them. So here they come. And meanwhile, you got Nebraska, who has played arguably two best defenses in the league. I maybe save a spot for Indiana there. Michigan, if they got their poop in a group ever. But, defensively, look, I don't think Northwestern's a joke, man, at all.
I don't think so either defensively.
I think they get overlooked. I think they get overlooked defensively. But look, and Nebraska actually did more yardage-wise. I know we're all getting sick of yards because it's about points, man. But, Northwestern didn't even give up 300 to Iowa. Total yards. Did not even give up 300 yards to those guys. Maryland barely got over 200. So, I mean, these dudes shut you down. Like, Northwestern does not allow plays to happen. They just don't. Nebraska piles up 442. And then to your point about the youth movement, why is it that, like, when you think about the players that you have seen sort of splash, like 80% of them are like freshmen. Just straight up, man. I mean, did you see the way Xavier Betts snatched the ball out of the air last week?
That was good.
The Bellevue West receiver. Look, these are sort of like routine catches. It's like I think one of them was like a hitch route. Another one was an out. Mm-hmm. So these weren't like amazing, 50-yard game-breaking plays. I'm just talking the manner in which he catches the football. Nebraska hasn't had people like that in a while.
You've got a bunch of different dudes.
Different.
That they've recruited here.
They're different.
They're working on keeping here.
Yeah.
But
those guys are different, man.
They are, between Fleming and Betts, and we'll see if there's an Alante Brown. I mean, Fleming's not blinked in the moment. I mean, 5 for 75 is nice, and it seems to be some pretty good chemistry with McCaffrey, right?
McCaffrey's a freshman, so it's McCaffrey just throwing darts like freshman to freshman. Who were the best receivers on the field? It was Fleming and Xavier Betts. Sure.
I mean, most likely to take an 8-yard gain and make it a 28-yard gain on a simple hitch.
These dudes have been here for like 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then McCaffrey, who looked better at quarterback?
He did.
McCaffrey or Martinez? It was McCaffrey, freshman. Let's go to the defensive line now. And how about the squatty running back kid, the power lifter kid, a strength kid? I can't even think of his name. Marvin Scott. Marvin Scott. Thank you.
I want to see Marvin Scott run the football 25 times today.
Me too.
Because how shifty, right? And listen, here's the problem, Kranak. We don't know how much of the playbook these dudes know, and then it turns into Tecmo 2 where you've got 8 plays to pick. Okay, because that's all they know. And if you can keep running those 8 and it's you're not getting stopped, great. But that's the difference here. What's Nebraska willing to do? You've got a bunch of guys that can go out there and block and make some catches and do the routine. And that's not disrespectful, all right?
Mm-hmm.
But you've got routine guys, and then you've got your difference maker guys, except one set of dudes know all the plays because they've been here, and another group of kids don't know as much as they want to know right now because of this stupid pandemic.
And when Nebraska is good, Chris, the routine guys, the hardworking guys, the lunch pail guys
are pushing the exceptional playmakers.
They're pushing them,
not starting in front of them.
Now they're still playing. They still get snaps.
And but it's 48-0 when they get snaps.
No, they even get snaps before that. They do. If you flash back to even Nebraska's best years, like that,
I get you.
They would get snaps. They would block their off, right?
Mm.
And then they would occasionally get a couple, occasionally get a bone, throw them a pass. But they weren't starting, and they weren't playing 80% of the snaps. No. They were pushing the hell out of Fleming, out of Betts, right? Out of the more talented, highly decorated, highly recruited guys. And when those guys got on the field against Northwestern, the moment wasn't too big for them. Nope. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. How about Ty Robinson and Casey Rogers and Luke Reimer and Miles Farmer?
Love watching them ball. They're not scared. The moment's not too big, and they're just playing.
Right? And look, Reimer's a sophomore. Robinson will be considered a freshman, I believe.
Redshirt freshman, yeah.
Yeah. Rogers, Farmer. So, look, Nebraska's getting – I'm not saying write off all your upperclassmen at this point, but I'm saying this is a crappy, weird year. Go young. Experiment. You're not winning the Big Ten this year. You're just not. And even if you do, is the game going to be played? It might even get – who cares, right? Like, it's about getting better. It's about just, like, building your program. This year is such an asterisk.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you going to do? You missed out on spring, too. Right? You missed out on
this
spring.
Is your spring ball, and it counts.
Yeah. So you didn't get a chance to experiment that much. I'm just saying the young guys are clearly showing promise. And that sometimes sounds so cliche when you're like, well, it's a young team. But we all see it. Like, we really see it this time, right? Like, Fleming and Betts are the most talented receivers on that roster. And maybe Alante Brown is too. We just haven't seen enough.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. Marvin Scott looks pretty damn good. Luke McCaffrey looks pretty damn good. You know, Ethan Piper looks pretty damn good. Bryce Bennett looks pretty damn good. Defense, Rogers, Robinson, Reimer, Farmer, Newsome. Just go down the list. They got some, right? Like, let these dudes play. Let them play. And, I mean, what happens if you're, I don't know, if you only win 2 or 3 games? Oh, okay.
Well, and you might get 2 or 3 blown out due to COVID. I mean, look at the SEC right now. Right. You got 15 games canceled.
What do you have to lose? And at some point, you know, and you hear Scott Frost working through it during his press conferences.
Mm-hmm.
You hear him working through it where he wants to reward the people that are doing everything right.
Sure.
You know? Like he's really after that. He's trying to be like, this person's always in the weight room on time. They never miss a thing. They help out the other people. They do extra work. Like, he wants that to be the baseline in the program. And that is smart and that's good. And Nebraska has to operate like that. I get it. But you can't let that color, right? Like, you can't let that be the ultimate determining factor in who actually plays.
Well, how far back are you willing to?
It's a balance, and he's working through it.
How far back are you willing to move the line in the sand?
It's true,
right? And it's tough because, I mean, this week, right? I mean, there was a page taken out of the Remember the Titans playbook, where you commit a penalty, you run a mile for Coach Herman, right? So that was what Frost talked about on his monthly show. Yeah. And I'm like, great, but you've been here 3 years, and maybe you've not had penalty problems to this extent.
Right.
In year 3, last year they committed some penalties, but it wasn't like the first 2 games of this season. And in year 1, you know, it took Mick and Gifford and some of those dudes that were. This is your senior season. You're 0-6, bro. It's your job to fix it. That was the message from the coach, right? And eventually, after Purdue, you had a breaking point. Really nice story by Derek Peterson a couple of years back about, you know, what flipped and shifted. What do you have in the locker room right now that are Gifford and Mick like? Okay, from a leadership standpoint, to fix it yourself. Now, yeah, coaches need to not be overthinking with red zone. Guys need to execute clearly, but eventually it's on the freaking player to not jump offsides or false start. And to be frank with you, when we talk about young guys that may blow some of the older guys out of the water athletically at wide receiver, get in your playbook and know where the hell to line up, and then don't pout because you're not on the field.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's a lot to balance.
It's worthy of Jack Daniels, is what it is.
It's coaching at a D1, at a Power 5. It's, there's a lot to balance there, but you can't let. Yeah, it's a balance. He's got to figure it out, and I think this is a year that you can, without upsetting the apple cart too much. And also, I think Frost maybe is over-rotating towards the lunch pail guys a little too much, thinking that he'll lose them if they get benched.
You've told me I need to do X, Y, and Z. I know my plays. I compete well. Why am I not playing?
Those dudes ain't going to be like that, though.
Well, you hope.
Those guys.
Everyone's got a breaking point.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. And I think he's seen it too.
Well, if you can beat out
the way he talked about Martinez in the past tense, he's done everything right. Look, and I've been a fan of Martinez. I think we
both really like Adrian, and he has been incredible for the program, and it's not over.
It defies logic. What he's the product he's putting out on the field right now.
Krennic, I don't think his shoulder's right. Period.
Could be.
And I have no inside info on that.
Fast, he's smart. I
just don't think his shoulder's right with throwing the football. Period.
Could be. It ain't working out.
No. Do you have a quick update here from the Deputy Athletic Director, Garrett Glassy, when it comes to Husker Vision and creative media. So Nebraska sold 6,000 cardboard cutouts, most in the country. Many of the full-size variety will flank the red carpet for the tunnel walk. Other cutouts going to be the lower East Stadium with overflow in the bleachers beyond the north end zone. So that's cool with the cutouts. We will get the Penn State lowdown, a legendary name in college football, Paterno. Jay Paterno, longtime assistant for Penn State. We'll sit down with him for the rewind, his thoughts on Nebraska, Penn State. This is Hail Varsity Weekend. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Excited to preview Nebraska, Penn State. We welcome in a longtime assistant at Penn State, quarterback for the Nittany Lions. And tell you what, his book is really awesome if you're a college football fan. Hot Seat, a year inside college football's pressure cooker. We welcome back Jay Paterno. Jay, thanks for a few minutes. How's your week going?
Going great. Hopefully this game comes off without a hitch.
That's what we're thinking. And you had an earlier report from Onward State, Penn State student newspaper. 6 more student-athlete COVID cases at Penn State. That doesn't specify specifically to football, but I'm just doing the math in crazy 2020 COVID, especially with the Ohio State-Maryland announcement. What's your view on things? And it's hard to get an accurate answer, isn't it, in 2020 with COVID?
Yeah, we had a board of trustees. I'm on Penn State's board of trustees, yes. And Monday night we got an update. And on our campus, it looks like our numbers have really come down. They're stabilized campus-wide. So I would assume that we're doing well in the athletic department. And we've over 800 athletes, so 6 out of 800 is probably not enough to tip any scales as it relates to football. But again, it's 2020. Who knows?
Well, that's good news as we speak now. And Jay, I want to get your thoughts. You're a guy that knows Penn State so well, and you watched the Maryland game. Let's start there. As you look at things, being on that sideline as a player and as a coach, what's going on with Coach Franklin's crew this season?
It's a mystery. I mean, this was a team that when the season started, it looked like the offensive line was going to be a strength. And, Maryland came into the game in 2 games with 1 sack, and they got to our quarterback 7 times. And an 8th on a 2-point conversion, which doesn't count in the stats as a sack. There was, a lot of people talked about the defense being really, really good, and that's obviously not been the case. I think the most concerning thing is that in 2004 when I was coaching, we struggled. But our defense never gave up more than 21 points in any game. So you could point to that and say there's some hope because we've got a strength on this team that we can be in games. But right now, Penn State's surrendering a lot of points on defense, having trouble scoring on offense. And granted, they played, Indiana, who's turned out to be a really good team, and Ohio State, obviously, who Ohio State is. The real shocker was the Maryland game when suddenly you're down 35-7. And that's, we went from 1961 to 2014, didn't lose to Maryland ever, and played them 24, 25 times. So this one's a little bit of, it sticks in a lot of people's craw.
Jay Paterno's with us, trustee at Penn State, former assistant coach and quarterback at Penn State. His book, Hot Seat, A Year Inside College Football's Pressure Cooker. We're previewing Penn State, Nebraska. So is it just that, and you guys have had some opt-outs, and injury, so that's an issue. But when it comes to confidence, is that something you're sensing? Is this team, you're 0-3, but is there a belief issue? And I flip it around in Nebraska, they're 0-2. They need something good to happen, and it's just been a struggle for the Big Red this year. But when you look at your own squad, is there some doubt in that locker room with some of the kids?
Well, not really haven't been in the locker room. I can't really say for certain, but the body language when you watch this team on TV is not good. And that's something that I, as a coach, when I was coaching, always looked at is how are the kids kind of carrying themselves during the game when things aren't going well, and the body language has not been very, very good. On the flip side, I watched the Nebraska. I do a TV show every week where I break down the opponent, and watching Nebraska on the sideline Saturday did not sense that at all. In fact, Northwestern's a better team than people realize, but Nebraska's a program that over the years would think that they would dominate a program like Northwestern. But even when they were struggling, the Nebraska kids fought all the way down till the end of that game and looked like they would have a chance to do something. And, the McCaffrey switch seemed to spark some things. And, as a Penn State fan, this is a nervous game for me, for all of us, because it's a must-win for us, but it's a must-win for Nebraska too. And when you have a program with the kind of pride they have, playing at home in a must-win situation, it's a very, very dangerous thing.
Jay, when an offense starts to struggle, the first person to take the blame is usually the quarterback. Nebraska's felt that in the past week with the Adrian Martinez and Luke McCaffrey quarterback battle going into this Saturday. But there's been some talk around Sean Clifford for Penn State this week as well, right? What's the quarterback situation for Penn State going into this game?
Well, Clifford, it sounds like Clifford's going to start, and, there's been some talk about playing Levis, his backup, but again, we'll see how that unfolds. I think that, as you look at it, the quarterback always takes the blame for this stuff, and Clifford missed a couple of passes they normally would hit in that game early on when they got behind, but in his defense, he has had trouble people have had trouble getting open for him, and the offensive line, the pass rush has been on him. Like I said, he got sacked 7 times Saturday, and it's hard to really, really be effective when you're getting hit that much. And at the end of the day, he set a school record throwing 57 passes. And when you're playing a team like Maryland, who had been giving up 290-something yards a game rushing, and you throw 57 passes, you got a lot of other issues behind besides just your quarterback.
Jay Paterno's with us. He's a trustee at Penn State, former assistant coach at Penn State, and quarterback to the Nittany Lions from 86 through 1990. His book, Hot Seat, A Year Inside College Football's Pressure Cooker. So how much issue has there been with this transition? I know Penn State went out and hired away Minnesota's offensive coordinator. Has there been a disconnect? Has there been some growing pains with the new OC, with Clifford, or is it just a matter of being down too many big-time players, either on the line or a running back? You mentioned the offensive line. What do you kind of put your finger on here with the new OC and this returning starter at quarterback?
Well, the new offensive system is not that drastically different from what they had, so that should not be a real issue in terms of X's and O's and plays and execution, that kind of stuff. Obviously, there's some terminology that's different. It just seems like, there are some dumb penalties the offensive line's been healthy and for whatever reason does not seem to be able to handle some things they're seeing. So I'm not sure exactly what it is. Now, losing 2 running backs doesn't help, but, when you have a veteran line, I mean, there were years back, you go back to the Nebraska teams of old, I could have played tailback and run for 120 yards behind some of those lines. So, I mean, you hope that you've developed that kind of line because we have some senior guys on that line that should be able to enable a freshman or a young running back to have some success. It just has not happened yet.
Jay, a thought with James Franklin, and I mean, you've lived the Penn State pressure cooker yourself. I mean, growing up like you did, how's James Franklin rolling with this 0-3 start?
Well, at his press conference yesterday, he talked about some things personally, and it seems like he was kind of venting there, just because he just seems like, and I don't want to say things are getting to him, but obviously when you're 0-3, no one's happy. So that's just reality. And but he's an upbeat guy. He's generally very, very positive. In fact, that may be one of the things that's a drawback to him because he talks very positively about his team in the offseason, and sometimes fans take that optimism and they stretch it as far as they want to dream when the reality may not be the same. So, for years when I worked for my dad, Jay Paterno, he always said, look, undersell and over-deliver, and you'll always have happy fans. He said they'll be unhappy with you during the offseason, but if they're happy during the season, that's far more important.
Yeah, it is.
And it's smart. I mean, it's like, if you tell everybody you're terrible. I mean, Lou Holtz did it, that whole generation. I mean, you would have thought none of them would ever win a game, and so when they'd come out and go 10-2, people were happy. Whereas when you promise people a college football playoff, or you talk about that and you don't make it, and that's a high bar, people are rightfully going to complain. Plus, I think the other thing that's changed is the money has gotten so big that people's patience is much less when they know your head coach is making $6 million or $5 million or $7 million, and they're saying, you're making $7 million, you got to start performing like that. So there's a lot of different pressures that are on now.
Jay Paterno with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Jay, I want to go to the defensive side of the ball for a second. One of the best players in all of the Big Ten, Micah Parsons, opting out before the season started. How much has Penn State missed his presence on the defensive side of the ball this year?
Well, unless he could play safety and corner, it probably wouldn't help that much because we're just having trouble with the pass game. We're not generating the kind of pass rush that Penn State has had the last couple of years, and as such, people have had the ability to throw the ball downfield. I mean, Maryland's quarterback had a great day. Justin Fields had a great day, and after the first half, when he struggled, Penix from Indiana made just a couple of really just took the ball down the field, down 8 points, went 75 yards, and hit some just amazing passes. So, we've got to do a better job stopping the pass game. But again, people have also been able to run the ball against us, and that's another reason for Nebraska fans to be optimistic and Penn State fans to be pessimistic, is that the running quarterbacks and the run game has been a problem for us as well as the pass game. And if Nebraska can come out and run the football effectively, it's going to be a long night for Penn State, or a long afternoon, I should say.
Jay Paterno's with us. Jay, a couple of minutes here. You've laid out just where some fear may be if you're a Penn State fan, but your gut says what? Give me a key or two and a prediction on Saturday, if you would, and then where can folks get your book?
I don't want to predict. I'm going to predict Penn State wins because I'm a Penn State homer. So that's coming. But the things that I think that will be critical are turnovers. Penn State is -5 on the year, and during Masters Week, -5 is what you want to be, but not in football. And so that's been bad for us. And we're not part of that is we're not generating in turnovers. I think we had 2 turnovers against Indiana, and it's been 9 quarters since we had a turnover. Got a turnover on defense. So that's going to be a problem. And I know that's also been a little bit of a problem for Nebraska. But I would say early in that game, if Nebraska can run the ball north and south with their tailback, as well as no matter who it is. I mean, the one guy I would not want to see, and this is no disrespect to Martinez, is when McCaffrey gets to the end of a run, I mean, he is very physical, so I would get out of his way myself. But, if Nebraska can run the ball and hold on to it and not make critical turnovers, I think it's going to be a real uphill climb for Penn State to win out there. That's my concern, but I still think I'm hoping Penn State gets this thing, gets some things corrected and holds on to the football and makes kind of plays they're capable of making, can come home with the win. And as for the book Hot Seat, it's available on Amazon or also at my website, which is jvpaterno.com. And if you order from me, you can get it signed and put anything in it you want. And but you can get it on Amazon and jvpaterno.com.
Jay, this was too short a time, man, but it was so much fun to get caught up and preview Nebraska, Penn State. And we'll give you a shout down the road and do this again. Thanks for a few minutes.
Sounds great, and I hope it's a really good afternoon for everybody. Both teams played really, really well, and we'll see who wins.
Jay Paterno, former assistant at Penn State, part of the Board of Trustees at Penn State, and his dad, Joe Paterno, of course. Good to get caught up and get the Nittany Lion lowdown. Mark Cranack, Chris Schmidt. Hail Varsity Radio Weekend. Willie J. rocking this morning. Hour 2 is on the way. We'll hear from Brandon Vogel, managing editor from HailVarsity.com and magazine. The Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, will be in. And then 1 hour from now, Cousin Dino. Dean Schmidt makes the prediction that will be right, accurate, and on the money. We hope this weekend, as it's the home opener finally for Nebraska. Hour 2 coming up with Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it, Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Cranack, Willie J. is producing and engineering. He's doing the old throwback Big 8 lid before he goes to 10 Ba. And we're excited, man. Nebraska Penn State home opener. Finally, you will be catching it on TV. And 6,000 of loved ones, friends, and remembrances, maybe the family pet. The cutouts will be in the stands, and excited to get into plenty of Nebraska Penn State. Also some thoughts on Bryce McGowan's and Will Bolt's recruiting class. We welcome in managing editor with HailVarsity.com and magazine, author with John Cook, who, by the way, crushed it with his recruiting class. Dream Like a Champion, a book you must now get. John Cook and Brandon Vogel with us at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, how many timeouts did you take with you into Saturday?
None. Take that pig home and leave the timeouts there.
You burnt all your timeouts and you brought the pig home, is what you're saying.
Yep, indeed. That was wow. What a post game comment from Kirk Ferentz. I'm not used to seeing that much heat out of Iowa, but I enjoy it.
That was really pretty entertaining, and I think, you know what, Fleck is probably respected, but he's not admired. I think folks respect that, he had a good season last year. I think some of the old school coaches, the Kirk Ferentzes, the Glenn Mason. You want to get someone cranked up on PJ Fleck, you talk to Glenn Mason. Some of the old school throwback coaches can't take the guy with the big tie, the bald head, the shades, and then the sprint at the end of the third quarter.
Yeah, it's definitely the risk you take by being as out front as Fleck is. And I think he's probably aware of that. I think he's kind of consciously made that choice of like, hey, this works. And I mean, his results, this year was always going to, I think, be a little bit of a step back. I'm surprised to the degree that it has been. They just had a lot to replace. But, I think Fleck's willing to make that deal of, you guys can dislike me and think I'm corny. And if I keep winning, having double-digit win seasons at places like Western Michigan and Minnesota, I'll take that deal. So, but sometimes, you get roasted by Kirk Ferentz post game when you do that.
We'll get into Nebraska, Penn State. Kranak, did you know that PJ Fleck's the only coach that brought his wife around the media sessions? At least the last time we got to go to Chicago. And nobody thanked him for it, but we all said thank you privately.
Okay. I was not aware of that, but thank you. Yeah. Send the behind-the-scenes pics, then. That'd be great.
No.
Okay.
So, Vogues, what's today about for you with Nebraska, Penn State?
I don't know. You could convince me of about, you could tell me the score of this game, and almost no matter what it was, you could tell me either team won by that amount, and I'd be like, yeah, I could probably see that. I think you've got two teams that are kind of fighting to get a season back on track. Penn State has it's certainly further off the pace than, we would have thought in the preseason. So maybe the hill's a little bit steeper there for the Nittany Lions, but it kind of feels like, which team is still willing to engage in that fight. And I think it's even, it definitely seems underscored in a year where you have so much outside of the norm and face as many kind of unique challenges as you do. It would be very easy in a year like this to be like, well, it's kind of it's a one-off. It's literally, it's not costing anybody any eligibility. Let's just try and get better. But it's kind of hard to overcome, I think, those hardwired emotions of, man, this is not what we thought it was going to be. And that's, beyond, that's in every area, not just on-field results.
Managing editor for Hail Varsity, Brandon Vogel, is with us. Let's make sure, this is a string around our fingers to remind us before we say goodbye today, we have to get to Bryce McGowan's, the new 5-star that Nebraska picked up. We still haven't spent a second on him, but that's
we've spent a little bit of time. We spent a lot of time yesterday.
I'm sure, and that is not a criticism as much as it is like, hey, he's a 5-star. It's a big deal. Let's make sure we get Brandon's take on it later. But football first. Is today the start of the McCaffrey era, and does he ever relinquish that?
I think it will be the literal first start of the McCaffrey era. I'd be surprised if you didn't see both guys at points today. But that'll if McCaffrey does indeed start, that'll kind of be up to him. Like if the offense is moving and things look good and there's a certain energy there, you basically can't take him out. So I don't think even if McCaffrey does get to start, I don't think this is the end of the Adrian Martinez era at Nebraska by any means. So I guess yes on one front and probably no on the other.
Brandon Vogel's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine managing editor at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. So when it comes to the passing game today for Nebraska, what are you going to ask McCaffrey to do? And Vogues, a little bit more reps for some guys that you saw that final drive. You think there's more of a youth movement?
I don't know on the latter. I'll be pretty interested to see. That was kind of the tenor of conversations from the coaches this week of open competition week, which sounds good and sounds great and sounds like the place you should be after the way that they lost to Northwestern and some of the guys that you saw in that game. But how many times over the past few years, even dating back to previous coaching staffs, have you heard something similar? And you just don't see those guys, and it's easy to kind of shuffle the lineup from afar. To a certain degree, you have to, I guess, trust the coaches a little bit. They're doing these things for a reason, but it's pretty hard, I think, barring some extenuating circumstances, to keep Marcus Fleming off the field based on what he was able to do against Northwestern. We only saw a little bit of him, but he probably earned a little bit more this week. So I think you will see some changes. In a one-score game last week, Nebraska made the decision to change quarterbacks, and Coach Frost said it was because they needed a spark. I think that's still probably the case for Nebraska. everything just feels so dreary or hard. I don't know what the right word is for Nebraska. Like if you could introduce some young guys and just looks a little bit more fun, I think that's a really big missing ingredient for the Huskers. And, you started out with the passing game. I think it's the key for Nebraska, almost certainly offensively, in this game. They've got to find a passing game that can threaten people. And that can be, like, if the run game's working, and I think Nebraska should be able to run the ball pretty well, you can keep that passing game manageable. I know people want to see some more shots downfield, and the coaches do too, and you need those. But if the run game's working and the passing game isn't just kind of a zero, and I mean, I'm not talking about Nebraska doesn't complete passes. They do, but they're not staying on schedule and being efficient when they throw the ball. That's got to change, because then if you're efficient running and passing, you're going to move the football, and some of those drives are going to end in points, unlike what we've seen so far.
Brandon, and you mentioned the receivers. Let's get into just physically what you saw from those guys. Now, whether they figure out all the playbook and they block downfield and all that, like, that's time will tell. But as actual receivers, what did you see out of Betts? What did you see out of Fleming that maybe sets them apart from people that Nebraska's trotted out at that position in the last couple of years?
Yeah, with Betts, and we didn't see a ton, but the two catches he made were fairly by the book. But he kind of went back to the ball, like he attacked the ball, which is one of those things that that coaches teach receivers all the time. So that was encouraging, and I mean, certainly his physical stature stands out among the guys that Nebraska's playing regularly at that position. With Fleming, I think it was just his ability to get open. He made some good catches, and that's the thing with this offense is you get a guy with Fleming who's got pretty good speed, and it only adds to that. But they've always been able to scheme wide receivers open, and I think that's part of the reason we've got a real quarterback question on our hands at this point. I don't look at Luke McCaffrey and say, well, there's a finished passer. He can make all the throws and do everything you want through the air. I don't think he's to that point yet. He might not even be close to that point yet. But if this offense can get people open and you can just make the right choice, make it a little bit like a video game. You got X, Y, and Z receivers, just press the button to the guy that's open. Nebraska usually has one of those guys open. So I think that almost shades you towards, well, it wasn't happening previously, at least not to the degree Nebraska needed it to. So put somebody else in there and see if they're a little bit more accomplished button masher.
Brendan Vogel's with us with HailVarsity.com and magazine. Vogues, let's get into the red zone. And
no, let's not, please.
Well,
no.
Vogues will have an answer, all right?
Okay,
it's like
good.
Indiana Jones's dad's diary. It's got an answer
Coach
in there.
Ross,
okay?
are you listening?
So the red zone shrinks everything, clearly, and when it comes to scheming open, there's not a ton of room to get open, and you couldn't just line up and smash mouth it against Northwestern, right? So Penn State may not be Northwestern defensively, but are there a couple of things you go back to maybe that you did against Ohio State? Because Nebraska was better in the red zone against the number 2 team in the country. They weren't against Northwestern, and now you got Penn State right now that's shielding their eyes from football. What are a couple of plays or, I guess, offensive concepts you think Nebraska could go to? So there is, all right, you're inside the 20, it's money time, and you can keep some momentum because you've done the work. You've driven the field. You've put a lot of yards up. You've converted some third downs. You've got a quarterback making a play. Where do you go? What's your what's the well look like when it comes to this offense in the red zone?
Well, I think part of the problem is the well doesn't feel all that deep at the moment. I went back and looked at it this week, like the Frost era as a whole, and they've run the ball well in the red zone. Now, against Northwestern, they weren't able to, and in some really short yardage situations, inside the 5.
Right.
And at that point, and I mean, I think this is the issue they're running into overall, certainly since 2018 on, is Big Ten's a run defensive league. You get down there, you don't have to worry about this offense scheming people open because there's just not really enough room to do that. So you load up against the run, and that's what Northwestern did. And you trust, you look at the wide receivers Nebraska's putting out there and just kind of go, whoever it may be, just go player by player and say, can you count on that person to beat the majority of Big Ten quarterbacks one-on-one? Because that's what it is in the red zone. You just need to win and get open and make a decision quickly. Since 2018, Nebraska's averaging 2 yards a pass in the red zone. Like that's not going to cut it with a 41% completion percentage. And most of that was done in year one. 2019 was bad, and so far 2020 has been worse. Nebraska's 1 for 9 passing in the red zone. So I think they're still looking for those pet plays. And the issue is not the runs. Like, okay, you just kind of tip your hat to Northwestern for stopping those last week. You gotta find some passes. I mean, how many teams? I mean, we see every team in college football using H-back or whatever personnel works for them. But it's kind of like the Wisconsin play. You just play action, do a little rollout, and how many times do you see the guy that comes from out of the backfield just kind of waltz into the end zone? Nebraska runs that play elsewhere on the field. Just haven't seen kind of enough efficiency and consistency, and it feels a little bit like an identity crisis. When they get down there, I think it really underscores, like, they're still trying to find where, like, these are our 8 plays, and we can run them against anyone. And I think a lot of that is because the defense is just able to gear up because Nebraska's wide receivers so far haven't proven that they scare a defense enough to cost them anything.
Spider 2Y banana, Vogues. Spider 2Y banana.
There you go.
Brandon Vogel's with us on Hail Varsity. It's kind of a coaching cliche to be like, well, we're a young team. But at the same time, look, small sample size. I can't think of another Nebraska team where there are this amount of young guys that show promise and are making an impact on the team. Do you see it that same way? Like when you look offensively, defensively, and you look at some of the splash plays and you look at some of even some of just the fundamental plays, can you think of another squad, Nebraska squad, that's had this many freshmen or sophomores that are really making hay right now?
No, I can't off the top of my head. It's a little bit, it maybe says something about this, I guess, rebuild, whatever you want to call it, new era under a new coach. Like, you tend to see those in year one. We didn't really see it with Ross. We didn't see it with Riley, even going all the way back to Pelini. Like, that wasn't a rip the Band-Aid off type of team, at least not that I recall. So there aren't a ton of examples of that. It's weird. We were talking about this kind of with just the rest of the Hail Varsity staff this week about, is this a youth movement week? And you're like, well, yeah, you could pick out guys like Fleming and Betts and Farmer that probably need to see some more. Heinrich probably needs to see some more time. But there's just you'd be sitting down some pretty experienced guys at some of those spots, certainly in the secondary. But maybe it's time, because you do see, and the sample sizes are small, like you noted, you do see these guys kind of make splash plays. So I think that's encouraging. Just with where Nebraska's at right now, it's encouraging in general if you're a Husker fan to kind of step back and really realize, oh, this roster is still really young. I mean, all rosters kind of have most of their scholarships in the freshman sophomore range, but not to the degree that Nebraska does at the moment. So that could be a good sign for the future.
Vogues, before we get you out of here, your thoughts on Bryce McGowan's...
You did it. Good job.
Because we spent a lot of time yesterday. Some really good analysis by Jacob Padilla. Vogues, you've been a Husker Hoops guy for a lot of years. In fact, you may have this Willie J hat, and we keep referencing it because he wears it all the time, but it's the old Big 8 hat. It's a green bill. It's got the green little square that says big, and then the 8 in white, and it's a white hat with a little green, and then it's like a clock, but it's got all the Big 8 teams around this Big 8 insignia. Well, we've fast forwarded clearly out of the Big 8 to now the Big 10. But a dude like McGowan's, watching some of his highlights last night, man, pretty impressive. What do you think?
Yeah, certainly impressive. Kind of the long scorer who can do it at all three levels, at least in high school. That Nebraska hasn't had a ton of those guys. They've had some really, really good players, some really skilled players. McGowan's is skilled, but he also kind of has the body type that, well, it lends itself to being a 5-star prospect if you're willing to put in the skill work, and he certainly has. I mean, it's probably no more simple than this. Like Fred Hoiberg, in a prepared statement, this wasn't like a gut reaction to a question at a press conference, leads off with, I believe this signing changes the whole trajectory of the program. Now, you could say, all right, well, maybe even that's a little bit hyperbole. It's a little bit strange to put a lot on the guy. But I look at that and say, yeah, I think that's Hoiberg speaking pretty freely. So that tells you, just kind of where this ranks in terms of, well, all the basketball players that Nebraska has signed. Now he's got to come and do it, and it's got to work out and all of that stuff still. But at this early stage, yeah, it's tough to think of much that compares to this.
Brandon Vogel. Vogues, can't wait to get your reaction to today's game, and we'll see if Nebraska gets in the win column. Thanks for jumping on today.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right,
Appreciate
there he
it,
is, Brandon Vogel with us.
He said it about McGowan's, and we got to talk to Gary about that too next. Gary, of course, the voice of Nebraska, Omaha Mavericks, and used to be with Florida Gulf Coast. He's been around college hoops a long time. Look, when I watched McGowan's film, I just didn't see – I wouldn't say there was any one thing that completely blew me away. Like, completely blew me away.
Dude's hitting 40% and above from three land in high school. I think that's pretty sweet. Most kids take 40 shots to hit 3 threes. Completely.
But the thing that stood out to me the most about him is he was described as versatile by Coach Hoiberg, but I see him more as just complete. This guy, he's 6'6". He's got great body control. He's got some nasty Euro step. He's at and Brandon just mentioned his skill level. Like, he has an array of moves. He doesn't have just one go-to. He goes left as well as he goes right. His ball control is fantastic. He can pull up from 25 feet. He can get to the rim. I mean, Nebraska has not had a player like that. There's no question. Does he step onto campus day one and light the league on fire? Who knows? I mean, the Big Ten's not an easy place to deal with. But wow. And I have no problems with his 5-star ranking. I'm like, yeah, that's about as good as it gets when you're, a 6'6", and your body type is such that you could pretty much play every position but center. And your skill level is like that too. I mean, that is a really, really good get for Nebraska.
Huge get, and the mayor's got it rolling. We'll see how that translates. We check in with the Iron Horse. Up next, Gary Sharp with us. It's Hail Varsity Radio Weekend. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Early to rise with Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Here's Chris Schmidt and Mark Kranick.
Working through game day. Saturday, it's Hail Varsity Weekend presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kranick. The Iron Horse is in studio. Willie J is getting Gary Sharp set up. We welcome in Sharpie. Yeah, it's studio.
When Nebraska hasn't played a home game in 50 weeks, I got to come in studio.
Hold on. You sound so clear right now. This is throwing me off my game. I'm just so used to Saturday mornings, the cell phone kind of, stuff going on. But wow.
Kranick, that malware on your home computer is a son of a bee.
Just keep talking, Gary. You sound so clear.
Hello,
You sound really good on a mic. You should do a radio show.
One of these days I will when I grow up.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot to get into. Sharpie, we'll start with football. We'll get to hoops. We'll get to some baseball. But let's get your read on the week. How dicey is it for both teams?
Well, it kind of felt like it was a week around here that we've been through before.
Yeah.
now we just have a quarterback quandary that has been thrown into it. I said this early in the week on my show. I think this is Penn State versus Penn State, Nebraska versus Nebraska today. We don't know what we're getting in Penn State. I mean, they're 0-3. James Franklin's kind of been retrospective all week. They've been pretty emotional after Journey Brown retired from football. Their effort against Maryland was startling. They were very lackluster. They're 0-3. You get on a plane and you go halfway across the country to a place which you don't normally play. How do you respond today? That's why I think Nebraska, if they get off to a good start, Nebraska could have this game in their favor. But we don't know what Nebraska team will show up. We think we know what Nebraska's mindset will be. We think we know who the starting quarterback is going to be. But are those same things that ailed Nebraska last Saturday, are they going to rear their ugly head again today? Because if they do, Penn State is still talented enough that they can take advantage of it. But I think there's a lot of similarities between these two programs where they are right now, and especially the quarterback position. Sean Clifford was supposed to be one of the top 3 returning quarterbacks. Now he is running for his life, and they are throwing the ball a ton because their 2 top running backs are out and they can't run the football consistently. I mean, they threw the ball 57 times against Maryland, and he got sacked 7 times. Their offensive line is really a jumbled mess. But I think Clifford has maybe hit his ceiling. You could look at Nebraska and say the same thing. Adrian Martinez and all the things between the ears that ail him right now, he may have hit his ceiling. So I think this is a fascinating game. It may be a battle of 2 teams that are combined 0-5 but have 7 national championships between them. That could be just perfectly ugly, or it could be just a chaotic game that we are here for in 2020.
Yeah, might represent the year.
Yeah. Gary Sharp is with us in studio on Hail Varsity Radio. You watched a lot of him in high school, and God, we just saw him a little bit, but Xavier Betts, he got in for, I don't know, maybe 20 snaps, something like that, but had a couple of catches, Gary, that I think you got to go back to like maybe an Anunwa, maybe a Kenny Bell. Mm-hmm. The way he snatches the ball out of the air is just flat out different. Are you at all surprised by how quickly he's been able to contribute? Because it looks like he's kind of on the uptick, like up and to the right. He is going to kind of keep playing more and more. Is that kind of how you see it? And does it surprise you that he's able to do that this quickly?
Well, he's come a ways, even if you go back to his time at Bellevue West. He had to get his head right, and he had to get his game right, and he had to get his off-the-field stuff right. And he was able to accomplish all of those. I mean, he's an extreme talent. He's a wide receiver that we don't get very often in the state of Nebraska. I think the game is starting to slow down just a hair for him. But I think Nebraska's at a spot, guys, and we've talked about this with the young wide receivers, is you got to throw them out there now because your first group of wide receivers aren't getting it done, and there's not a lot of respect from the first 2 really good defenses when it comes to the first collection of wide receivers. You need some guys that can stretch the field. You got to take some pressure off the quarterbacks, and he fits right into that mix. And he's somebody who we thought could be a big-time contributor. I think he's just going to have to be a big-time contributor earlier. I think Betts, Fleming, and Brown are key guys moving forward. But first and foremost, with whoever's out there, they got to fix the wide receiver room. They got a lot of drama going on in that wide receiver room, and they've got to settle on the guys that can make it easier on the quarterback and help this offense. And once they do that, then I think you'll see things fall in line. But look for Betts to play a lot today, and look at the connection with McCaffrey that he had, as you kind of alluded to, Mark, at the end of last week.
Big time connection.
Gary, sorry to cut you off, Chris, but hold on. You can't just allude to a lot of drama in the receiver room without giving us a little bit more.
So you have, I think you have a lot of different personalities that are in that wide receiver room, and you have a much different coach that's running it, from Troy Walters to Matt Lubick. You have some young guys that, they're happy to be at Nebraska. They don't know what it takes to be out there every single day. Marcus Fleming, he's in Columbus, Ohio, and 30 minutes before kickoff, he's on IG Live. Okay, you can't have that because Nebraska needs him, and we saw him against Northwestern. He can make plays. I think they've got to decide on who's going to get touches out of that wide receiver room and let everybody else fall in line. But they've got a ton of different personalities in there that room has to settle down for Nebraska to take the next step.
I want to get into a little bit more of the wide receiver room. And when we look at what's been constant in 2020, that's been inconsistency with spring ball, with travel? Are you at home in Florida? Are you in Lincoln with your teammates? What is preventing more opportunity for these young guys? Is it because there's been no spring ball, and spring ball's now counting for real because it's a condensed season? And the other part too is it these guys not knowing the playbook? Is it on them, or is it the situation they've been put in?
Well, I think it's you have a lot of different things. Yeah. I think there's been some guys have battled the virus, some guys have been injured. Some guys have been swimming in their head when it comes to the playbook or what is required of them on a daily basis to play football at Nebraska, that you just can't show up and they put you out there, that you've got to meet some standards before they trust you. Now you're kind of in that weird spot of, all right, I still don't think you know the entire playbook, but man, we need better out of that position, and you're good enough to provide it. So you see where the difference is in trying to decide who gets those opportunities. I also think there's, Omar Manning, and I don't expect him to play much today, guys. He only played 5 snaps against Northwestern. Omar Manning has not lived up to what we thought he would be. But Omar Manning, that's on him. He's got to find a way, if he wants to play football at Nebraska, to do the right thing, get on the football field, gain the trust, and show what he can do, what we saw when he was in junior college. But again, I don't expect a lot out of him today, and I don't know where he's at for the rest of 2020. But he's got to get right, because if he gets right, that's another added weapon. But if not, Nebraska is poised to move on because they've got enough wide receivers right now that they can use.
We were talking about the youth movement overall, and, it can sound cliche, but Gary, I think you can count. I think you have to use more than 2 hands to count the number of, I don't know, splash plays is the right word, but just guys that you notice offensively and defensively for Nebraska. I mean, it's in the double digits now, and they're freshmen and sophomores. Out of all those guys, offense, defense, just take freshmen and sophomores, people that maybe didn't play hardly at all last year. Who is most impressive to you?
Well, you're right about the youth, and people say, well, now Nebraska's having a youth experiment. And they, kind of forced to, because Nebraska, both of these teams actually today are some of the younger teams in the Big Ten. And Nebraska has, it started against Ohio State. It was even more against Northwestern. Young guys are playing. Some places you have to play young guys. Others, the young guys are showing up and they're showing out. I think on defense, it starts with Luke Reimer. Everybody is going, wow, look at Luke Reimer. That just shows you how void we have been of really good linebacker play for a while. Luke Reimer is a really good football player. Throw out the measurables. He knows how to play football. Technique, he's really sound now. He's still young, so he's going to make some mistakes, but he's still very talented. I think you look at Ty Robinson. Ty Robinson is kind of what we thought he would be, and he's making strides. Casey Rogers, I think you'll see more of Jordan Riley today. We know what Payne can give you. Some of these guys are going to make young mistakes, but I think some of the younger guys are coming along, and of course, Miles Farmer. I mean, what does Miles Farmer's contribution look like today? How many snaps does he play early in the game? How soon is he on the field against a Penn State offense that's going to throw the ball a lot and has a couple of nice wide receivers and a big old tight end that's an NFL tight end?
That's the thing. How much of Farmer is in the mix, because you want to talk about a tough situation where you got to go in for a guy that has been a ball hawk for this Frost and Chenander defense in Deontay Williams. And what happens? You have that first drive, you shake the cobwebs off, and then you go make 2 game-changing picks that set up the offense. I mean, that ROI is insane for it to happen that quick. He could be one of those difference-maker guys that you used to see in yesteryear at Nebraska based on the impact and the turnover force.
Now, I know, guys, we're all excited about young guys, and that's what we do as football fans. You always want to know about what the next thing is. For Nebraska to make a stride forward this year, let's be honest, the older guys also have to be good. And you just mentioned Deontay Williams. Deontay Williams got on the field to begin the second half, and some of the same things that rear its ugly head is poor tackling and what happens on Northwestern's opening drive. Some poor tackling, some angles, some bad decisions, and Northwestern puts the ball in the end zone. So we love the young guys, and they're going to come along. But I think for Nebraska to move forward, it's some of the younger guys, the juniors and the seniors that have been in the program for a while, that – you know what? They got to be better. They got to be better. Some of them already are. Ben Stille is off to a great start this year. It's just the guys that we know about. we need them to cash in. But it's encouraging that there's some young guys that are contributing on both sides of the ball, and you can at least see that there's a spark there, and it's going to happen sooner than later. You don't have to wait for a couple of years.
Gary Sharp's with us, the Iron Horse. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, you think about the running back position, and I'm still sold on Mills. I think he'll be fine. Hasn't had a great year yet, but I think it's coming. I'm not seeing anything from him that gives me concern. I just think you got to kind of settle down offensively, period, in order for him to start shining. But I'm a little confounded by, like, where's Ramir Johnson? Like, what happened there? Marvin Scott. Look, should we see him more? Ronald Tompkins is whatever is off the field. Like, what needs to happen behind Mills? How important is that for Nebraska's offense moving forward?
Well, wasn't it encouraging to see Scott?
He's awesome.
I mean, we already know that he's
a little snippet, but he was good.
He's 35 years old, and he's got a family of 3, and he's got a portfolio.
Yes.
I mean, him running the ball, yards after contact, he was running over people. I think that's kind of a jumbled behind Mills because of injuries and getting yourself right to play football. I imagine we'll see Tompkins back in the mix today. But Scott showed you enough that you can rely on him. I don't know about Ramir Johnson, Mark. I mean, that's somebody who I thought coming into this year would be the backup. His body is different. He just hasn't gotten many touches. But let's go back to Mills. Don't you guys think today for Nebraska to be successful, Mills and Robinson have to touch the ball at least 35 times combined? Mills, there's a couple of things here. Who would have thought that after 2 games, the longest run by a Nebraska running back would be 15 yards, but that was Mills against Northwestern. They handed the ball to Mills in that first half, and you could kind of see that he was starting to get lathered up, and things were starting to open. Now, he made a couple of poor decisions on lanes that he could have jumped into, or there were times that it was there and the blocking broke down, but he was starting to get it going, and then in the second half, running the ball, he was absent. Now, they did throw the ball to him 6 times, but I think if you get Mills going and Robinson early, 35 touches combined, I think that's a great sign for this Nebraska offense. Mills is going to be okay. I just think you'll see more of a concerted effort to hand the ball off to the running back instead of a majority of the plays that have been called have been designed quarterback runs or that quarterback draw that I hope they shelve for a little bit here.
Gary Sharp's with us, the Iron Horse. Sharpie, a thought on Bryce McGowan's, Nebraska's 5-star, and a quick comment, too, Bud, on Will Bolt's haul.
Let's start with Bryce McGowan's. That's a game changer. I mean, first of all, for the image of the program, that you got a 5-star, and it wasn't just a layup because his brother was here, that you had to show off and, had to convince somebody who doesn't know this part of the country, is a 5-star, could go to Georgia where they could potentially have the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft and Anthony Edwards this upcoming week, that people look at Nebraska now and this is a pretty good recruiting class, so that Fred has a plan and he's selling it, and he has a great recruiting assistant in Matt Abdelmassi. Now you just got to get McGowan's here, and then him and his brother playing together with the talent you have. Right now we don't know a lot about Nebraska in a deep Big Ten, but at least for the trajectory and the image, that's a huge pickup. For Will Bolt, Will Bolt has got, 400 guys that he's signed? It seems like every day Nebraska baseball is adding somebody, and they're doing the Van Horn blueprint, is stay around this area, supplement it with some Texas, some Oklahoma, and build your roster. I was just really surprised by Kendall Rogers yesterday saying that the Big Ten is looking at going conference only for baseball,
That's
and
brutal.
That it's all bus. I don't know if people understand, but Nebraska is like the Hawaii of the Big Ten, and the closest is Iowa City. I don't know how that's going to work, but there's a lot of momentum in recruiting. This was a great week recruiting. John Cook signed maybe the greatest class in the history of college sports. If you look at the amount of what he got, I'm not, I'll go all hyperbole here, and then what Fred was able to do, and of course what Will added yesterday as well.
That's well put, with perception changing when you get a 5-star to Lincoln. And what can happen?
And the Nebraska basketball fan, we've all been there. You're waiting for that next kick in the gut. Okay, you're waiting for,
or below.
Yeah, that would have been like yesterday. Bryce McGowan says Georgia, and you're like, that typical. But to get him, and people around the basketball circles know how talented he is. You were talking with Brandon a little bit earlier. That's a huge pickup for Nebraska.
Well, now it's up to football. Get in the win column.
Well, they're going to get, I think Thomas Fedoni and Rivals will get a bump to a 5-star.
Okay. All right. Sharpie, hang tight. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Wonderful.
Good to talk to Mark.
I know.
Mark, you look beautiful today. How wonderful is it, by the way? We're doing the show here. Game day is at the Masters, and we've got football, and we have to appreciate football today because you look across the country, and the virus has not been kind to college football today. We are just a couple of hours from kickoff, and we're going to play in Lincoln. So let's appreciate that.
That's awesome. Quick timeout. We'll wind down a weekend edition. Cousin Dino is up with his prediction next. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes, sir. You heard me right.
Here are the guys, Schmidt and Kranak.
Well, Hector, here's the game plan. You're going to bring us 2 absolute martinis. You know how I like them, straight up. And then precisely 7.5 minutes after that, you're going to bring us 2 more. Then 2 more after that every 5 minutes until one of us passes out. Excellent strategy, sir.
Pre-game accordingly. Moderation can be overrated, but it's preached. We welcome in Cousin Dino. He is in section 36, row 9 today, the Cousin Dino cutout. And we say hi to Dean Schmidt with his prediction. Dino, ring that bell, brother. How are you?
Man, I'd sure like to really ring it today. Doing pretty good. But your opening today kind of really tugged at me heartstrings. Love the cutouts, and Joe Papa Steve looks pretty good in that hat, wouldn't you say?
You know, just ask him is what I'd tell you when we talk about Dad and the cornhead. He never took a bad picture, Dino.
Yep. Pretty much. And if it was, we threw it away. But it reminded me of the many memories I had and we had with him. And speaking of memories, where were you in September 1982?
I'm sure I was at one of the grandparents' homes while you guys were pre-gaming and then going to a game.
Well, September 1982, I was in Philadelphia doing some contract work with IBM. Got hooked up with a number of Penn State alumni, and we made a bus trip out to Happy Valley.
So were you at the game in 82?
I was at that game where Turner Gill brought us back from a 21-7 deficit to a 24-21 lead with about 2 minutes left. And, of course, as we go back in history, that was a frustrating ending due to the fact that they threw that touchdown pass in the oblong section of the end zone. So
things in Happy Valley, you've got an extended sideline and an extended end zone.
Yep, for sure. So they ended up winning 27-24, but it speaks to the frustration, I think, of what we've all been through the last 2 or 3 years. You know, Ohio State, that first year under Frost, being ahead and getting and losing the game last year at Northwestern, and just all the frustration of close games and being on the losing end. So only have to go 1 year more to August of 83 when Nebraska was, I think, ranked number 1, or Penn State came off of the national championship, and we beat them 44-7 or 44-6. It was in the first playoff classic.
Yep, kickoff classic, Rozier and Fryer.
Yeah.
So there's so much history, Dino, with Penn State, Nebraska. I got to get the prediction and what happens today, and good luck and God bless with your crystal ball with either of these teams today.
Well, I kicked the crystal ball down the road last week, but I got 28-24 hanging around, and I'm going to go with me Huskers today.
There we go.
28-24, and double down on the 50-50 from last week. We score first, and we score last today, and let's go beat us some Nittany Lions.
The old McCaffrey era. 28-24, right. Dino says Nebraska over Penn State. Dino, we love you. I am FaceTiming you in about 45 minutes from your cutout, all right?
Sounds good. I'll see you then.
Love you, Dino. There he is. Bye. Dean Schmidt, back at you Monday on Hail Varsity. Kranak, you be good.